Welcome back to Attack of the Poison Outputs. Today we are going to look at an example as to why you should only use Monero when doing private transactions. And to exemplify this, we are going to be looking at a seizure of stolen funds in which the person who stole the funds was using both Bitcoin and Monero. And the Bitcoin was traced and it led back to some Monero that the person also used. So let's break this down. Now, to make this easier to kind of go over, I already have a Twitter thread that I made almost 3 years ago, and I'm just going to read off this Twitter thread because it does a really good job of summarizing what had happened. You can follow me, by the way, at Xenu Monero. All right, let me zoom in there. So today, the federal government announced that the 2016 Bitfinex hackers were caught. $3.6 billion worth of Bitcoin seized. The court report released. It's a fascinating summary of poor OPSEC, one of the most impressive endorsements of Monero's obfuscated blockchain to date. The entire court report is available. I have it open here, but again, we're just going to be reading through my tweet thread. But if you're curious, you can read through that yourself. The suspects made many errors over the course of several years. They applied for different crypto exchanges with the same IP address and the same Indian-based email service. Feds were eventually able to decrypt a cloud storage owned by the suspects. The cloud storage had keys for over 2,000 Bitcoin addresses and a spreadsheet containing information related to crypto exchanges that they had signed up for. The feds then worked backwards, followed the flow of all Bitcoin transactions. Agents were able to see that following the Bitfinex hack, the suspects had employed several techniques to launder the Bitcoin. This involved moving the Bitcoin through darknet markets and splitting the Bitcoin into smaller amounts. They also, in some cases, used Monero. So like in many other cases, law enforcement had a target and they pulled information from them. They connected IP addresses. They looked at services they were using and so on and so forth. And eventually they were able to even compromise this cloud storage that they had. And once you know, it has all the keys for all these Bitcoin addresses. So this isn't really like chain analysis so much as these guys were idiots and they were leaving stuff lying around. But what's important to notice, though, is this image here and the subsequent image as well. So it says, see attached is one of the images presented in the report. It shows the full transaction graphs of Bitcoin from the original hack. Notice how no Monero is traced. The presumed Monero withdrawn from these exchanges avoids any chain analytic software. So let's click on this, and this is from the report, by the way. Okay, so as you can see up here, we have the Bitcoin that was stolen. It went to this wallet on Alpha Bay Market, and then here's the accounts that they had. And as you can see, there's Monero in these accounts, but there's nothing from that Monero, right? So these accounts were funded by different cryptocurrencies, and what they are doing is they are tracing the Bitcoin of it, but the Monero is just kind of there, right? And, you know, this is not really that surprising, right? What can you really do with Monero? Well, I've already shown you with poison outputs and, timing analysis. But in this case, you know, it's pretty much useless because they don't really have that poison output to start things, right? They don't really have that KYC exchange to start things. At some point, this person switched into Monero, then they funded these accounts. The only reason that they're able to connect the Monero to this Bitcoin is because they used this same KYC exchange right here, this VCE. This is one of the KYC exchanges that they used. And from there, they followed the Bitcoin to other exchanges, linking the identity of the person to that Bitcoin that came from the hack. And they were able to link other Bitcoin that, went to this exchange as well. In this one here, this is another exchange. See how the Monero just kind of points into it? They don't know where the Monero came from. It just kind of appeared into this other exchange. But, again, because they're able to follow the Bitcoin, it doesn't really matter to them, right? As long as they can follow the Bitcoin and trace that. Here's another one. It says here, in fact, the report even shows that there were 2 accounts that were initially entirely funded with XMR. The report has no idea or trace as to where the XMR had originated from, right? So here we have these 2 accounts. Monero, there's no origin of this Monero. It just appears here, and then they just follow the Bitcoin to these accounts associated with this person. We can read down here VCE4, which is one of these exchanges, was entirely funded by approximately 13,200 XMR via approximately 21 transactions that took place between in or around November 17 to March 2019. Another account of VCE4 was created on or about November 20th, 2017, and was registered in the name of another Russian national and under another Russian email address. VCE4 account 3 was entirely funded by approximately 6,870 XMR via approximately 10 transactions that took place between in or around November 2017 and November 2019. And here's the report. And just to really touch on this quickly, so they looked at the different exchange accounts, and the reasons that they believe they were owned by the same individual are as follows. Were tied to similarly styled email addresses hosted by the same India-based provider, were accessed by the same IP addresses, were created around the same time period surrounding the hack of the victim, were engaged in similar trading patterns entailing chain hopping to anonymity-enhanced virtual currency, and or were abandoned following a request for additional know your customer information. Furthermore, there were connections with the spreadsheet, which included the login information for accounts at various virtual currency exchanges, and a notation regarding the status of the accounts. 6 of the frozen accounts were referenced in the spreadsheet, with a notation including frozen. In other words, the suspect possessed a document with the login information for the accounts at one of the centralized exchanges that received funds traceable to the hack of the victim, and that reflected his knowledge that the accounts have been frozen. And it goes on talking about the login details and stuff like that. I think you get the idea, though. In all of these graphs, none of the Monero is being traced, and only the Bitcoin is. So really, to summarize real quickly, just use Monero. If you're using Bitcoin, it's a huge vulnerability, and this really shouldn't be that much of a surprise. But we're going to see over the next couple of years, as investigations get caught up, more and more people are going to be caught just because they use Bitcoin instead of just using Monero. We just finished this transitionary period where darknet markets have been moving over to only Monero, and that transition period is going to catch people because they were probably using Monero and Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin is a lot harder to obfuscate than that Monero. And the second story to look at, this was a different one where a darknet market vendor was tracked, laundering $7.2 million. This is completely real, by the way. The criminals were Non-Wu and Pang Pang Tang. That's right, Wu Tang. We're 2 of the defendants here. How funny is that? It actually took place in New York too, not Staten Island. It was in Flushing, Queens, but I thought that was hilarious. Anyway, they had this whole drug operation where they were selling drugs on the internet, and they were caught. And if we scroll down here, we see that in total, Wu and Tang, I told you, received nearly $8 million in Bitcoin proceeds. Investigators also found nearly $900,000 worth of cryptocurrency on Tang's phone. Some of the money Wu and others received was laundered by converting Monero, a form of anonymized cryptocurrency that is extremely difficult to trace or monitor, into Bitcoin. The Bitcoin would then enter cryptocurrency exchanges controlled by Wu, Tang, and others. All right, so really the point here is they're basically telling you without telling you that the Monero that popped in there, they have no idea where it came from, but they were able to trace all the Bitcoin, right? So the Bitcoin they traced, and then they opened up their phones and they found all this other cryptocurrency, and they're like, where'd you get this? And they're going to say, well, I don't know. And what probably was happening is they were using Monero. And it would make sense too that they were using Monero because this operation went through 2022. And at this point, Monero was probably 50-50 in usage compared to Bitcoin. You had Alphabet 2, White House Market had just closed, so they had been running during that time as well. So they had definitely come in contact with Monero. But like the previous example I showed, they're just looking at the Bitcoin. And I foresee that we're going to see more and more of these as time goes on, because during this transitionary period, a lot of people were still using Bitcoin. So anyways, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Please donate if you can. And otherwise, have a great day.